Good morning. Welcome to Sunday School for March 21st. I missed St. Patty's Day, but that's okay. I was working. All right. Today we're going to be in James again, and like I said last week, we're in the Applied Christianity Studies in James. It's the high school lesson for the older group of high school kids.
And adults.
I guess because we have teens, we do it in high school, not the middle school version for teens. We're doing high school now, and it's also for adults like usual. We're doing teens and adults. It's just Bible, so technically I might be silly at times, but some adults like that too. But that's all. So it's just Bible lessons, and today is called dealing. And I'm not talking about poker here, about dealing cards, right? We're talking about, just deal, bro. Just deal with it, right? It's how dealing with difficulty is really what we're talking about. And the thing is, when you're Christian, you're dealing with things, and how the book puts it here is employing spiritual resources in difficult situations, right? So it's, how do I deal with difficult situations the devil puts in my place, right, in the world, and still have a Christian attitude and keep moving forward, right? Because we've been kind of talking about that in James. Like we talked about having a good attitude last time, and then and we kind of summarized the life of James, right? But so now it's how do you deal with it? Not just having a good attitude, but how do you deal with difficult things? All right? Let's start off in prayer like we normally do. Lord, thank you for this day, that we can come here and learn about your word, and help us to listen with our full hearts, and help me to say the correct words, and be with those who are listening, and help us all to remember this lesson not only for right now, but as we go throughout our days and in our week, and apply this to our lives, Lord. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're going to read James 1, 5 through 12 to start off. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let thee, brother, a low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as the flower of the grass he shall pass away. For the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perisheth. So shall the rich man fadeth away in his ways. Blessed is the man who endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receiveth the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. All right, so 5 through 12 there. A lot of hard to say words, but not hard to understand or read, right? So let's break it down. Let's start in the beginning. So, like I said, James is the brother of Jesus, and we learn about how to have a good attitude, but sometimes it's not just about your attitude, but it's how you handle situations and not giving up and going through things, because the devil, if you're doing God's work, he will try to put stumbling blocks in your path, and he'll want you to turn around or stop what you're doing. And that's not what God has plans for. And you have to, let's just read it, get into it. So it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given to him. Okay? So in the first part, it's saying if you lack wisdom, right? So if you don't understand what's going on in the situation, or let's say you're talking to somebody about God and you don't know what to say to them, it's saying you can ask God and he will give to everybody liberally, right? So he'll just give you everything you need, give you a lot. Okay? And it said, basically, God doesn't hold back, and it will be given to him, okay? And there's other parts of the Bible, well, another part where Jesus talks about this, and Jesus says, you have an earthly father who gives you good things, right? But God is the best father. Why would he not give you the best things? Because he loves you more than your earthly father, okay? Because God is perfect and he loves you perfectly, right? So why would God not give it to you? And there's other part of the Bible that says that anything you ask for in the will of God, God will give it to you, okay? Because it's the will of God. So I like to remember those two things when I'm asking for things, because I don't want to ask for, hey, Jesus, I need a new Lambo so I can go talk to people about Jesus, right? That's not what God needs. God will give you a car, though, if you need a car. Give you a van if you need a van. If you need a plane ticket to go somewhere, okay? But God's not going to give you a plane just for having fun, right? He's not going to give you things to be rich. That's not what God does. He can, but it doesn't mean you need those things. He'll give you exactly what you need for doing his will, okay? So you have to remember, they're talking about things that are God's will here, okay? In this point in time, he's talking about wisdom, okay? So he's not going to give you wisdom to like crack, hacking a website or something. Say, God, I'm trying to hack this website and I can't figure it out. Help me. That's not what this is saying, okay? He's saying, if you lack wisdom, right? And he's talking, what God talks about is during his will, okay? How do I, like you could say, God, how do I talk to this person, like I said? Or you can say, hey, God, I'm trying to do something at work and I don't know how, help me out. Okay, sometimes he'll give you wisdom, sometimes he'll give you somebody to help you, okay? Just depends on what you need at that point in time. Okay, but definitely can give you, this wisdom he's talking about is wisdom to handle yourself in a situation, and it can give you, kind of like when you talk about the armor of God, he can give you those kinds of things. Like the helmet of salvation, right? Like the devil always works on you. Wait, am I really saved? Am I not going to be saved? Am I going to lose my salvation? Well, if you have the helmet of salvation, you understand God's word says, no, Jesus died for you. Okay? And that's your salvation. You don't need to worry, but you can't keep your head straight, right? Because you can't lose that. And it's different things like that. So if you can ask God for wisdom, he can help you. All right, let's go on verse 6. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. Okay, so now there's kind of a catch to it. Okay, you don't just ask and go, I don't know, is he going to give me or not going to give me? What's going on? Right? That's like Gideon. Gideon in the Old Testament, he was a prophet, and he was sleeping in this cave, and he was like, God gave him a message, right? And he's like, wait, was that from God? Or was that just my thoughts? Or was that the devil? What was that? Should I really do that? Hey, God, if that's it, I'm going to go to bed here, and this is my mat right next to me. If that was you, make the ground wet, but not the mat. Okay? Good night. And he woke up, and that's what happened, exactly like he said. He's like, but was that just circumstance, like the weather, or was that really God? So he keeps wavering in what he's saying. So then he goes, okay, God, if that really was you, I'm going to do the same thing, but now I want this to be wet and that not to be wet. So we can take into account the weather here, right? Like God can't control the weather, okay? So he did that too, right? So then he knew God wanted to tell him. But we don't need to act wavery like that, which I have a problem with all the time. So this is good for me to hear, because I'm like, did I just think of that in my mind, or is that God telling me to do something? And I think we could do that a lot, because we talk to ourselves, and you talk to yourself in your head most of the time. Even someone who talks a lot like me, you'd be amazed by the things that still don't come out of my mouth, even though you think I just blabber on all day. Okay? There are things in there, and sometimes I wonder if it's God giving me the idea, or if it's me. But if it's God's will, God's giving you the idea. Just that's the easiest way to put it. But here we go. Let's learn how we have faith, though. Okay, so it says in verse 7, for let not. Oh, sorry. Let's finish verse 6. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Okay. So like any storm, waves are bigger the more you have wind, right? Wind across the top of the water, you get waves. Because wind pushes the water, and I think technically, I'm not 100% on this, because I'm not a waveologist, but the wind pushes the water down, and it hits the bottom and comes back up like waves. So it's technically going through the water, but we just see the top moving, okay? And so that's what it's saying. It says, the wavereth is like the wave of the sea driven by the wind. Okay, so the stronger winds you have, the stronger waves you have. I know that's for sure. Right? But it says we shouldn't be like that. So we shouldn't be driven by the wind. So verse 7, for let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. Okay? So we shouldn't expect it, but we should ask, but let him ask in faith. We should just understand that he will give it to us. And they're saying, a double-minded man is unstable in his ways. And let's stop right there. So when they talk about waves, I always think about that. And what God calls us to do in the Bible, and you can see it if you read Judges, the people of Israel, they believe in God, and they have good times, and then they don't have faith in God, and they have bad times, okay? So what we need to do is, I always call it the wave, the roller coaster. So the roller coaster goes like this. We're supposed to go right in the middle of that. When you have good times, it says right here, it says, where did I see that? Oh, it's a little bit further. So let's keep reading. I'll show you that. I'll finish that illustration in a minute. Okay, so it says a double-minded man is unstable in his ways, all his ways. Verse 9, let the brother of the low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low, because as a flower of the grass he shall pass. Okay, so let's just stop right there and we'll finish that. But so it says, okay, so what happens is you can be a double-minded man. So just like the wave, right? We're talking about the roller coaster or the wave. It goes like this. Okay, so you're going up and down. Okay, so what happens when you're up, right? Just like Israel, and you can even read in Deuteronomy 8, right before they're about to leave. And Jesus quotes this when the devil tempts him. He quotes Deuteronomy 8. They're in the promised land, and God says, hey, when you get to the promised land, and you have all this good stuff, okay, do not forget me, okay? So that's what happens. You go up on the roller coaster like this, and you're like, woo! I'm at the top of the world, okay? What happens when you fall? If you don't have God, you go, and you get rocked like a wave. What happens when a wave goes over? It crashes, right? So it's saying right here, it said, but the rich in that he is made low, because of the flower of the grass he shall pass. So if you're up here riding high and you don't have God, you're going to fall, and you're like a flower, you're just going to get crushed. Okay? Like at the bottom of that wave. You're a surfer. Woo, tubular man. Okay? Quit surfing. Okay? But what it's saying is, you need to be up here, and it says, but, saying when you're up at the top, doesn't actually say that. Sorry. Oh yeah, it does say. So it says, but in the rich that he is made low. So remember when you're up, say, hey, wait, I'm only up here because of God. And remember that there will also be downfalls. I had to remember to keep in mind with God that I'm good right now, but there will be a bad time coming. Okay? So when you fall, you expect that. Okay? But when you're low, remember, hey, it says right here, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. So I'm down here, okay? But I'm exalted because I am down here because I suffer for God. Okay? So that way, if you're at the top, you're having good times, you realize that's because, hey, I'm up here, but I'm going to go low, and that's going to be okay because I've got God. So you remember him while you're up here, and when you're down, you remember him. So instead of riding a roller coaster, like an unstable wave, right, I'm going to be technically right here, because if I'm up, I'll say, I'm up, but there'll be a time when I go low, and I have to remember God. And when I'm down, I'll say, wait, you know what? I'm suffering for God. So that makes you even keel, okay? I'm not having a roller coaster of life saying, one day is crazy, the next day is crazy, and I don't know what to do. I was doing so well. Why am I doing so bad now? I'm not so bad. I'll never get good again, right? That's just, you're not going to be able to deal with things unless you always put it in perspective of God, okay? That's why God is so good, right? Because even though we don't just immediately go to heaven when we're saved, we have this stable foundation. That's why Jesus is called the rock foundation, right? Because it says when the storms come, I think it's in one of the Gospels, right? The storms come, it doesn't wash the man away. It's a parable Jesus gave. It doesn't wash his house away, right? That's what they're talking about here. Because you have Jesus and you're focusing on God, the storms that do come don't wash your house away, okay? Right? You say a storm's coming, but I've got a good foundation, it's going to be okay. And when you build a giant house, you go, wait, I don't need a giant house. I'm just good right where I am, it's okay. All right? And then, okay, so let's look more at this rich man. It's at 10, but the rich in that he is made low, because as a flower of the grass he shall pass away. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. And 11, for the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower thereof falleth, and the grace of the fashion of that perisheth. So also shall the rich man fade away in his ways. Okay? Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life. So it's also talking about we're here still here on earth, okay? And there's some people you can say, hey, they're not with God, and they are doing just fine. Look at those people over there. That man is rich. He drives a Lamborghini. He is the worst person I know, and he's super rich, and how come he gets all the good stuff, and I'm here dealing with the bad stuff? Okay? Doesn't make any sense. How come I'm working for God, and this guy doesn't do anything? He just doesn't care about anyone. He's the worst person. He gets everything he wants. Okay? But that's what he's saying right here. He's comparing that person to a flower, and it says, back in 11 again, think of the sun is no sooner risen with a burning heat, right? The sun comes out, and if it's too hot, the grass, what does it do? It kind of turns brown and it withers away, right? You ever been in the summertime and your grass turns brown midsummer? You're like, the grass is doing so well, I water it and everything, it can dry up because the sun's too hot, okay? Even people that water it, if you're having one of those years where it's over 100 temperatures every day, your grass can burn. Okay, and it's the same thing for the flower. But that's what happens when that rich man, when he loses his riches, he's not going to handle it well. And what they're really talking about here is verse 12, it kicks off into the spiritual realm, is when that rich man goes to heaven, when he goes to the afterlife, he won't go to heaven, he'll go to hell, and none of those riches mean anything, okay? But if you are not worried about riches or about suffering and being poor, right? And it doesn't always mean money, that's what I'm talking about, like the roller coaster. If you're with God, you understand that none of this being rich or poor here on this earth, whichever I'm at, if good or bad things are happening to me, it's all good because we're doing God's work. And it says right here that we are blessed if we endure these temptations, like we talked about last week, or these trials, as you may call it. Because when we are tried, we receive the crown of life. Okay? So we're going to get a crown like a treasure in heaven. God's going to say, here you go, because you did my work. Okay? It doesn't say if you do a lot of my work. It says, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Okay? So if you love God, it doesn't matter if you loved him once or loved him all the time and doing lots of work, you're going to get this crown. Okay? Now it does say that we're going to give these crowns to Jesus, because we know that we can't do any of this stuff without Jesus, right? But that's what God's promising is, just remember, when you're having ups and downs, that God will reward you. That's what we talked about last week. God's going to give you a reward, and he will always remember those things you did for him. Okay? Because you chose to do them, right? We didn't do these. Christians don't do things for salvation. We don't do them for us, to make us better. Look at me. I'm going to heaven because I did good stuff. Right? If you hear that at a church, that's wrong. Okay? Because what happened was Jesus is the one. Jesus can actually do that. Jesus can be in heaven and he'll go, look at me, look what I did. And we'll be like, amen, you did that, right? He won't do that because he has a better nature than us. I'm just saying he's the only one who can do that and is justified. Okay? But because he is such a just, and because he's God, he would never put that in our face and say that. But even if he did, we would say, yes, you did. Amen. Okay? So now, let's just talk about some examples of what can happen. I don't know, I'm looking at that. Not the book. All right. So, 2 Corinthians 11 and 24. This is written by Paul to the church in Corinth, right? 2 Corinthians 24. Oh, sorry, 11. 11:24. Okay, so he's giving them example of things that happened to him, some trials and temptations that happened to him, and he had and there was a difficult time, but he didn't waver, like we're talking about. He wasn't riding the waves. Okay, he was taking it just like he should. Okay, it says, of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes save one. Okay, now what are stripes?
Lashes?
Like lashes, yeah. Horrible things. Okay, like whips, like getting whipped. Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered a shipwreck. 3 times he had a shipwreck. Right? Imagine being in a shipwreck 3 times. And night and day I have been in the deep. Let's just stop right there. Okay, imagine if you in your lifetime, because we all think our lives are bad right now. Okay, all I know is I've never been whipped 40 times, or technically it's 39 times. I've never been whipped 39 times. He's had to do that 5 times. He was 3 times beaten with the rods. Okay? So people came at him with a rod. I mean, that's worse. I don't know if that's worse than whipping or not, but. And then he was stoned. And in the account of stoning, you can look in Acts 16. Oh, that may be where he was beaten 5 times.
Is Paul saying all that stuff back?
Yeah.
Why? Because he believed in Jesus?
Because he was talking about God, and he went around telling people. So,
Okay.
one time he was stoned, and they literally thought they stoned him so hard, they walked him out of the city because they thought he was dead. They just left him there. He was beat so bad, he was beat to death. And some will even say they think he came back from the dead. I don't know about that, but I think he was just beaten within an inch of his life, is how we would say it. And it said, thrice I suffered a shipwreck, right? There is one account too, I think it's in Acts, I don't remember, but Paul was in a shipwreck, and they swam to an island after the ship just broke up in there. Luckily it was close to an island, and when he got to there, not luckily, it was the grace of God. God helped him. But then he got to there and they started a fire because they were cold, and Paul They got shipwrecked. He helped people not die. And then he started a fire because he's not riding this wave. He was just like, oh, well, God's either going to get us through it or he's not, right? And then Paul went to there and started a fire. And out of the fire, when he started the fire, a snake jumped out because it didn't want to catch on fire, and it bit Paul. And he was like, who cares about this snake? Right? Because he was, not because he's an awesome action hero, okay? Because he has God and he doesn't worry about those things, okay? All right, so let's go on. And it says, 26, in journeys often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils by my own countrymen, in perils by heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among the false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. Beside those things are without that which cometh upon me daily, the cares of all the churches. Okay? So, all he's saying is, he's just doing God's work. Okay? And these things are going to happen to you. Okay? The more you do God's work, you're saying, I don't have these problems. Well, you're not doing the work that Paul was doing. Okay? And that doesn't mean we're all going to have that. Even Paul said he thinks he suffered more because he was against God, right? He was against God so much that when Jesus came to him, he said, you know, hey, Paul, you're kind of a pain in the neck, right? That's not his exact words. I think he said, it's hard to fight against you, Paul, because it's basically because he's so evil, okay? And Paul thinks that's why he had to suffer so many things, okay? But that's not the point. The point is, for us, there's going to be a roller coaster in our life, and we need to understand that as a Christian, that's going to happen, and we don't need to ride the wave, okay? Don't ride the wave, because that's what makes it harder for you. Things are going so well. Now things are going so bad. Or just things are going so bad, my life is horrible, okay? That's not... Look for God and see why, right? If you're up, say, hey, God, thank you for helping me be up here. Help me to have the same attitude when I'm down here. When you're down there, you say, hey, this must be for God. I'm suffering for God. I don't know which one's harder because they both seem to be difficult, right? And it's easy to be on top, but what I'm talking about is the fall. That's what this was talking about, was the fall. All right, now let's go into 1 Corinthians, just a book back in 10. We're going to finish on these verses. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. Okay. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. There hath no temptation taken you but such as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that which ye are able, but will with temptation also make a way of escape that ye may be able to bear it. Okay? So this is the hard part for a lot of people. It's hard to keep this in mind. But what happens is people sin and they say, well, what else am I going to do? Okay? God wasn't there to help me. This is the only choice I had to do. A lot of people think the only choice they had was to sin. Okay? What else was I going to do? I can't help it. The world is against me. Or I deserve to do this bad thing. Right? But what does it say? There is no temptation, right? It says, so there's nothing that can tempt you to do sin that is not as common to your temptation is not more than anybody else's. Okay? And it says, and God is so faithful that he leaves you a way out. Okay? He leaves you an escape route for every sin. Just think about that the next time you're thinking about doing something bad. Because you think about it, you know it. And it says, no matter who you are or what you are, you can escape if you want to. It says two things there. we don't have to sin. We can get out of it if we want to. You'll be able to bear it, is what it says. And God gave you the way. So if I like this because it puts the blame on me. I know that sounds weird. That helps me not to know that I'm not sinning because there's just things I can't help it. This is just the way that I am. A lot of people say, this is the way that I am. It's just the world thinks it's bad. It's not bad, it's good, right? This is the world wants you to think things are good that are really bad. But God says, I have the choice not to sin, okay? And what the key is being faithful, right? Wait, God said I can get out of this, I don't have to do this? I don't have to. That's hard to remember. It's hard to remember, I don't have to be a sinner. I don't have to do this right now. And God, if you pray for it, I've done it before. You say, God, give me the wisdom to know when I'm going to sin and give me the wisdom to choose not to. Okay? And sometimes that prayer, it hurts because then I see I'll be about to make the choice to sin, and God says, hey, this is that point, Kevin. This is that point where you're going to sin. Like you asked me to tell you right now. And sometimes I pray and I get that and I'm like, Gah! There's that pesky God. He's reminding me like I asked him to. Why did I ask him to? Right? I've literally had this conversation I've had many times. Okay? It's the wrong attitude to have, but that's what I said. And sometimes and I go, you know what? I just shouldn't. Okay? But if you are not riding a roller coaster, you go, you know what? I stopped before and it was fine. I can stop right now. I don't have to do this. No matter what I think is justifying my sin, no matter what lie the devil has told me, or I've told myself, okay? It's not always the devil, it's you too. Whatever I've told myself, I can get out of it. It says God is faithful in that way because he always gives us a way out. Okay? And that's what's interesting is we talked about having the right attitude and understanding your faith in God, right? Last week. And it kind of ties into the same here because it's saying you can go through bad things and good things in life. And you don't have to be upset when the bad things come. Okay? Paul could have just as easily been bit by a snake out of the fire and said, God, why are you doing this to me? All I'm doing is your work, and you make this snake bite me, and now I'm going to die. But he just threw that snake aside and said, it's fine. And the people around him were amazed. And they're like, you could die. It was a poisonous snake that bit him. But he didn't die because he didn't let that temptation bother him. Okay? And I'm not saying you put yourself in danger and then say, well, God will get me out of this. What I'm saying is have faith in God that when you're doing his good works, he'll get you past it. And part of doing God's good work is not sinning. That's the good work that shows people that God is around. Because they all want to do that sin. When they see you not do it, you're doing a work for God. Okay? So I would say if you get anything from this lesson, 1 Corinthians 10, 12, and 13. God is faithful that he will always be there to give you a way out. Remember to take that escape door, okay? Oh no, here comes the sin. Escape hatch. Okay? You ever seen Star Wars? Or any sci-fi movie where the bad guys are coming and the ship's about to blow up? There's always an escape hatch. Okay? There are some movies they don't have an escape hatch and they're stuck on the ship and have to deal with it. But on God's spaceship, there's always an escape pod. Okay? Get in the escape pod. Lesson for today. Use the escape pod when you're dealing with difficulty. Alright, let's close out in prayer. God, thank you for this lesson. And help us to use this as we go around and try to do your will, Lord. And help us to be faithful and understand when the good times come that the bad times are coming too. The storms will come. But we don't have to worry, that we can have faith in you, that you'll help us. And help us to remember there's always an escape route. That we don't have to worry about what the world throws at us, because we live outside of this world. We live in your world, which is eternal. And we don't have to worry about death. We don't have to worry about sin. We don't have to worry about anything, because you're with us. And whatever we endure, it's because of you. And whatever we have that's amazing is because of you. And that in the end, we will be with you, Lord. And just help us to remember that and keep us there, Lord. And we thank you for everything in Jesus' name. Amen.